everybody, I'm Vicky and welcome to STEM at Home. And actually this is my home, so welcome. What a beautiful day here. Today we're going to be talking about Gimme Shelter. And Gimme Shelter is an activity that we designed at ESD 112 to support younger students with learning a little bit about STEM while we're at home during the summer or anytime really. You can actually download Gimme Shelter from our website, which is www.stemmaterials.org. It's totally free. Some of you will also have received a set of materials from your school district, but if you didn't get the bag of materials, it's really no big deal. These activities are designed to be using anything around your house, and I'll show you some tips on how you can find things that might work really well. In the bag, we just have a few simple materials, some construction paper, a little sheet of tin foil, paper plate, there's some straws, plastic knife, a little bit of clay, but really you can have kids using anything that inspires them to do this design. So Gimme Shelter is really about helping kids to understand, first of all, that sunlight heats the earth. And boy, am I feeling that today, which is great. A sunny day works perfectly to do these kinds of activities, but actually you can do them any time of year. So Gimme Shelter is all about having young students design a shelter for their special little tiny pet. And let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to take them out really carefully so that you can see how they work. It's actually a UV reactive bead, and when there's no sunlight on the bead's white. But when the sunlight hits the bead, it turns this gorgeous shade of purple and then pink. And actually, the more sunlight it receives, the pinker it gets. So I'm going to keep him here on my wrist as we do the rest of the activities today. That way we don't lose them. And the UV reactive bead comes in the kit. You can actually find these online or at any other craft store. They're pretty cheap, and you can actually buy a few of them and string them together and create a different kind of pet, a snake or a reptile or whatever your student is interested in. So the first activity in our Gimme Shelter lesson is actually going to have students create a map of any part of their outdoor world. It can be the front yard, it can be the backyard, it can be the park, the playground at school. But today, we're actually going to map my front yard. So super easy, blank sheet of paper. If I had a clipboard, I'd use a clipboard, but I don't have one, so we're going to use this nice surface to write on. I'm going to get a pencil, and we want to have kids start with a perspective. So I'm just sitting here on my front porch and I'm going to start drawing my map this way. So you actually really want to work on mapping and drawing skills with young kids, because spatial awareness and spatial intelligence and being able to put things in perspective in space is a really strong skill that helps support kids later on in STEM careers and different STEM subjects. This is especially true for girls. So make sure that you're doing lots of drawing and mapping activities with young kids. So we're just going to start by drawing a map of my front yard. And since I'm sitting here on the porch, I'm going to start my drawing on the porch. So we'll keep it from that perspective. And it doesn't have to be complicated, and please don't make it perfect. We're just going to start by drawing the front porch and this sidewalk that comes out a little bit. And then I've got these bushes to my right, so I'm going to make sure that I put in those bushes, and I'm just going to make them circles. And then there's the street. So I want to get a slightly different perspective, so I'm just going to get up and take a look at the house from the other direction. So I want to make sure that I get the tree that's over here. So I'll just put in another circle. And the last thing that's different is the soil around the bushes. So I'll just draw that in. And that's my whole front yard. Whew, well, we found some shade and when we finished our map. So the next thing we want to do is have kids actually draw a key on that map with some crayons or colored pencils. And the idea here, again, really simple, but we just want them to be able to identify different types of materials that you find around your yard. So we're going to start with just picking a couple of random colors. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick green for the trees and bushes. That makes sense, right? And the next one I'll pick, we have that light sidewalk, we have the light sidewalk, it's the same material as the driveway. So I'm actually gonna choose blue for that light colored rock, and I'm gonna color that one in. And then the last big feature in my yard was the grass. So I'm just gonna use this purple for the grass and kind of shade that whole area that was grass in that same color. And that's it. Doesn't have to be complicated. So the second task is we're going to take kids on a walk, and what we want them to be doing is thinking about temperature. The same materials we identified in the map, but some in the sunlight, some in the shade. And we're going to see how much of those materials absorbs the sun's heat. So I like this spot. We can take a look at soil in the shade here and soil in the sunlight. So with this activity, we just want kids to get down and touch. So what do I notice about this piece of soil in the shade versus this spot of soil in the sunlight? Do I think it's warming here or cooling here? I might need to touch this one again. Do I think that's warming or cooling? I definitely feel like the one in the shade is cooling. So here's a really good spot to identify temperature in dark rock. Now you and I will call this asphalt, but kids are probably just going to call it rock, and that's perfectly fine. So one thing to note, be real careful when you have dark asphalt like this. It can get really hot. So you might want to test it first, and then give a student the opportunity to say, is this warming in the sunlight or is it cooling in the sunlight? And then let's test over here in the shade. Does that feel different? Is that warming or is that cooling? What do you think? So this is a good spot to look at light rock on the sidewalk, also in the sun and the shade. So again, we're just going to come and touch the light rock that's in the sun part, and is that warming or cooling? Give it a second. And then in the shade, is that warming or cooling? There's a big difference here. Kids are really going to feel that. We've done a couple different investigations. We've got a map, and we've had students identifying some materials based on whether or not they're warming or cooling. And the last task in Gimme Shelter is to have kids design that shelter for their tiny little pet that we met at the beginning. Now, like I said before, you need to use any special materials, but you do want to talk to your kids about criteria. So these are the things that our design has to have. So our pet needs to be able to have shelter from the sunlight. So we want to make sure that our design has a door. We want to make sure that our design has a roof, and we want to make sure that our design protects our creature from as much sunlight as possible. So to do that, he needs to stay the same color when we put him in as when we take him out. Another really critical component of engineering design with students is that we get them to draw their ideas before they build. This might be tricky with little ones because they want to get their hands on the materials and get going. But again, it's that connection to visualization in your mind, what you see in your mind, and being able to put that to paper really strengthens that STEM skill. So I'm going to draw my design based on what I have learned and what I think my pet is going to really enjoy for their shelter. So I think I'm going to start with the paper plate as my base. And then I'm thinking about a picnic shelter from when we go camping and how it kind of looks like the side of a tent. And I'm going to use that as the inspiration for my design. So another key feature is to get kids to talk about the materials they want to use as they're designing their solution. So I noticed on some houses in my neighborhood, there's these reflective panels, solar panels, and I saw a piece of tin foil in my kit. I think that's got to protect the house from the sunlight, right? So I'm going to put the tin foil right on top of the shelter. I'm even going to label that so that I remember it in case I don't have time to build the whole thing today. Lastly, I remember that my design has to have a door. So I saw some popsicle sticks, and I'm actually going to use those, and I'm going to build a door that we can put on and take off. I think that's a pretty cool idea. So I'm going to tape together some popsicle sticks. And that's gonna go right at the front of my shelter. Let's see if it works. So here's my model. It's all built, and I've got the door that I designed to be removable. And I'm gonna find a spot for it now in the backyard. And I think I'm gonna look for some place that's a little bit shaded and that maybe doesn't have any of that dark rock that we were testing a little bit earlier. I like this spot. I think that'll give nice protection from the sun, but also the wind. We do get a lot of wind here. So I've got my tiny little pet here, and I'm gonna place him inside the shelter, and then put the door back on. The nice thing is you really don't have to wait that long to see if it works. So let's see if it worked. Not that great. He's definitely pink. But you know what? That's fine. Failure is always an option, and usually it's how we learn the most. So let's think about how to redesign this. So our design didn't exactly work, but actually that's great. One of the key things that kids need to learn when they're really, really young is that our designs are not always perfect, especially the first time. And when we fail first, we succeed sooner. So take that opportunity to make sure that kids go back and redesign. It really teaches the skills of perseverance. So that's it for Gimme Shelter. We really want to thank you from all the team at ESD 112 for doing STEM at home, STEM in your classroom, whether you're a parent, a babysitter, a friend, an aunt, an uncle, or a teacher. Thanks for getting kids outside. Thanks for doing STEM. We really appreciate you.